Before we throw Surtur into 40k, you have to remember what he is in Thor Ragnarok. He isn't just a big lava monster with a sword. He's an ending given shape, primordial fire giant of Muspelheim. Bound to the prophecy of Ragnarok power source, his crown plus the eternal flame purpose, destroy Asgard, end that chapter of the cosmos. He's not a schemer, not a politician, not a god in the chaos sense, feeding endlessly on belief. He's closer to a cosmic function call. When Ragnarok equals sign true, execute destroy Asgard. Once you put his crown in the eternal flame, he becomes the fully realized Surtur, a mountain-sized titan of molten stone and star-hot fire, sword raised, reality around him warping from sheer heat. Asgard, a realm of gods, dies under his blade. That's his whole deal. Now imagine that after fulfilling his purpose, Asgard gone, prophecy complete, there's a glitch. Instead of dissipating neatly back into myth, some fragment of Surtur's essence, still wound around the idea of burning the old world down, gets dragged somewhere it was never meant to go. Not into another Marvel realm, into the warp, into Warhammer 40,000. It starts, as so many bad ideas do in 40k, with a chaos sorcerer looking for a shortcut. The daemon world doesn't have a name that matters anymore. Once it was a forge world, or a shrine world, or something else that pretended at purpose. Now it is a blister on reality near the Eye of Terror, a cracked, bleeding sphere where gravity, geography, and theology have all given up and decided to be horrible together. Skies of bruised red boil overhead, veined with lightning that screams scripture when it strikes. Volcanoes chew constantly at the horizon, belching ash and fragments of half-melted architecture into the air. Rivers of lava cut through plains of bone. The air tastes like burned iron and old prayers. Here, a warband of the word bearers is staging something ugly, a grand ritual to bind a primordial fire spirit from beyond the veil. The idea is simple by their standards. Step 1. Reach into unreality for something very old and very angry. Step 2. Chain it. Step 3. Drop it on an imperial world and let it burn in the name of the dark gods. The sorcerer in charge thinks this is clever. He stands at the center of a vast summoning circle, carved into cooled obsidian, script etched in 8 overlapping languages of blasphemy. Around him, his brothers chant, armor the color of dried blood, catching the light of a dozen sacrificial pyres. Cherubim stitched from flensed flesh hold censers of warp reactive incense. Bound daemons lurk at the edges of the circle, drooling ichor, straining against brass chains. He has done this kind of thing before. He has dragged lesser daemons bodily into the materium. He has bargained with flame spirits from the hearts of dead stars. He believes, deep in the rotten core of his soul, that he understands fire. He does not know Surtur. He has never heard of Muspelheim. The name Asgard does not appear in his corrupted tomes. His grimoires, torn from the libraries of 100 burning worlds, do not catalog eternal flames kept in vaults under god cities. But the warp doesn't care about local canon. Across the multiversal mess, certain concepts rhyme. Fire that ends worlds, the last blaze of a civilization, a destroyer bound to prophecy. Surtur is all of those. In Thor Ragnarok, Surtur is more than a boss fight. He is a narrative endpoint, given form. Crown plus eternal flame equals the last chapter of Asgard. Once the equation runs, the realm dies. That's not just power, that's definition. When the sorcerer's ritual reaches into unreality for primeval apocalypse flame, it doesn't just troll the local warp. It throws a hook blindly into the deeper, stranger waters, where stories and their echoes float. It finds an ember of Surtur, not the full towering titan who shattered a realm. That version did his job and collapsed into Asgard's core, his purpose discharged, his existence, by the rules of his own universe, complete. But in the warp, where ideas, memories, and stories have teeth, things like Surtur don't simply vanish. What he represented lingers. When the old world's time is finished, I rise, and it burns. The ritual snags on that. For a heartbeat, the daemon world goes very quiet. The wind stops screaming. The volcanoes hold their breath. Even the ever-present background chanting of the warp drops in pitch. Then the summoning circle flares. Runes carved into black glass erupt with molten light. The air within the circle thickens, distorts, as if someone is trying to pour a star through a keyhole. Heat rolls out in waves so intense that word-bearers in blessed daemon-forged power armor feel their ceramite soften. The word-bearers laugh, because of course they do, chanting praise to the four. Fire is good, fire is cleansing, fire is the breath of Khorne, the kiss of Slanesh, the caress of Nurgle's fever, the spark of Singe's change. They think they know what they're looking at. Then they see what they've actually called. A shape uncoils inside the circle, cramped beyond endurance. At first it has no clear outline, just pressure, just heat. But then horns resolve, scraping against unseen dimensions, like blades dragged along the inside of a too small coffin. Lava-slick flesh swells, pushing against the invisible walls of the summoning field. A sword forms in its hand, not a daemon weapon, not a crude chain axe scaled up, but a slab of star stuff, a blade big enough to split mountains, that hums with an ending that doesn't belong here. Its edge is less a line of metal and more a place where things that exist stop existing. The word-bearer's laughter falters. The thing's head rises. Two eyes like twin suns snap open, burning not with the fractured, color-shifting madness of a daemon, but with steady, focused purpose. This is not Asgard, Surtur rumbles. The words are wrong for this universe. They do not slot neatly into any known language in the sorcerer's auto-translation, augmetics. They arrive in his head as meaning forced through a filter labeled unknown, foreign divinity. He staggers, then recovers, drunk on his own arrogance. This is good, he tells himself. This is better. He has pulled something truly alien through the veil. Think of the favor. Think of the glory. Think of the skulls, the shrines. He raises his hands, voice swelling. Great spirit of ruin, in the name of Khorne, we. The chains of the ritual bite down. Psychic shackles, forged from sacrifice and sigils, wrap around Surtur's limbs, binding circles that have held screaming warp beasts for centuries flare to life, pouring compulsion and name magic into the forming giant. To most warp-born entities, they would be binding and definitional. They would not just hold, they would describe, telling the creature what it is allowed to be. To Surtur, they feel like twine laid across a volcano's mouth. He pulls, not with effort, not even with malice. He simply moves in a way that assumes the universe will make room, because in the last story he was in, That's how it worked. The circle screams. The wards crocheted painstakingly into the fabric of reality around the ritual site, shred like spider webs in a storm. Light, wrong-colored, hungry, jets out in jagged lines as the metaphysical scaffolding that kept this place marginally stable collapses. Reality gives. On the Daemon world's surface, volcanoes that were already absurdly unsafe erupt harder. Entire mountain ranges split along seams of molten rock that were never meant to be exposed. Rivers of lava reverse direction, flowing up toward the summoning site, as if gravity is reconsidering its loyalties. The sky splits, not into another portal, not into some neatly bounded gate, with edges and a destination. It tears like paper soaked in oil, revealing something more primal behind it. A wound flooding with heat. Clouds of ash ignite. Daemons outside the circle howl, their forms blistering as the temperature of the warp-tainted atmosphere spikes beyond what their particular emotional configurations can handle. Lesser entities pop like bubbles in a frying pan. From the warp's perspective, it is like someone has lit a match in the middle of an oil refinery. Pressure waves ripple through the immaterium, shock fronts of alien, ordered fire plowing into the usual churn of rage, despair, and lust. For a moment, whole swathes of nearby warp currents are ionized into something that is neither properly warp nor properly real, just raw, incandescent ending. Far away, great shapes made of want and hate pause. Something has arrived that is not one of theirs. Down on the ritual plateau, the word-bearers finally grasp, dimly, that their shortcut has worked too well. Their armor is starting to glow. The sigils they trusted are slag. The primordial fire spirit they wanted to chain has straightened to its full, impossible height, squeezing against dimensions that were never meant to host it. The sorcerer looks up, robes smoldering, and locks eyes with Surtur. For one instant, he understands, not in words, but in gut-twisting clarity, that he has not summoned a daemon, or a god, or a weapon. He has summoned an ending that has lost its assigned target and is now looking for the nearest replacement. He opens his mouth to pray, or bargain, or scream. Surtur raises his sword. The ruinous powers notice immediately. They always do when something new moves in their ocean. The warp is not merely a place. It is them, their moods, their hungers, their reflexes. When something foreign pushes through its currents, the whole sea tenses. They felt wisp before, as clean calm. They felt the Teletubbies, as absurd comfort. Surtur is different. He feels like a script. At the end of the story, all this burns. That should be Khorne's domain, or Siege, or some hybrid of destruction and transformation. There is war in it, and there is change, and there is an end to what was. On paper, he should be just another mask they can wear, but there's something wrong with it. The rage isn't personal, the change isn't schemed, the decay isn't patient, the excess isn't about taste, it's just ending. The warp is a theater that loves improv. Surtur walks on stage with a final page already written. Khorne is the first to lunge, The Blood God's attention slams toward the daemon world like a red comet. A being whose every neuron is kill sees a titan of fire smashing a ritual apart and thinks champion in his skull-crusted throne atop mountains of bone that never quite stop shifting. Khorne leans forward. The imagery pleases him. A giant wreathed in flame, a sword that splits continents, worlds burning, armies undone in fury. No finesse, no trickery, just impact. A red tide of approval surges across the warp, rolling over battlefields as berserkers howl without knowing why. Yes, Khorne decides. Yes, this one could be fun. He roars his blessing, voice like colliding planets, trying to brand Surtur's essence with his mark. Brass sigils of the Blood God blossom like metastasizing scars in the psychic medium around the fire giant, jagged runes of skull and blood and more. Surtur doesn't even notice. You cannot incentivize a bomb with extra exploding. Its job is already to go off. It does not become more itself because you shout at it. Khorne's mark skates across Surtur's aura, trying to sink in, and finds nothing to grab. No hatred for specific enemies, no lust for dominance, no warrior's pride, just a single all-consuming directive that has already been fulfilled once and is now unmoored. End the realm. Slaanesh tastes the destruction and finds it boring in their palace of impossible sensation, where every whisper is also a scream and every caress a knife. The Prince of Excess samples this new flavor. There is plenty of sensation, heat, pain, fear. Souls ignite like kindling, nerves go incandescent, eyes boil, but there is no artistry, no escalation, no drawn-out perversity. This is not a gourmet ruin. This is an industrial furnace. They reach out with silken threads of temptation, trying to lace Surtur's fire with meaningful indulgence, the thrill of watching others burn slowly, the joy of savoring the moment between structural failure and final collapse. Nothing takes. Surtur does not savor. He does not slow down to enjoy the view. He simply is the view. Nurgle reaches for any hint of resignation and finds that Surtur doesn't accept decay. He preempts it. In his garden of rot, where everything is compost eventually, Grandfather Nurgle chuckles as he peers at the blaze. He is used to ruin being slow, used to watching hope soften and slump over time, like fruit left in the sun. Here, there is no slow putrefaction, no lingering swamp of misery, just flash fry and done. He stretches out a feeler of affection, offering Surtur the comfortable inevitability of rot, the cozy surrender of why fight when everything ends anyway. It slides off. Surtur does not surrender. Surtur arrives. There is no time between. Siege frowns in several directions at once. In the crystalline, ever-changing maze that is his domain, the changer of ways studies the fire giant as one fuzz and finds it refuses to be. Here is change on the grandest scale, a realm destroyed, a status quo obliterated, but with no second act, no new pattern to replace the old, no intricate web of cause and effect, no labyrinth of branching timelines. Just before realm exists, after realm doesn't. That offends him, aesthetically. Siege doesn't hate endings. He hates endings that don't lead to something else. What use is a burned realm if it doesn't fuel 3 more schemes, a dozen prophecies, and a new cult? He tries casting Surtur in different roles on his mental stage, a herald of a new chaos god. No, there's no seed of worship there, a shard of some ancient star eater. No, the flavor is too narrative, too mythic, a pawn to be nudged into key positions. Maybe, but the pawn does not respond to nudges. They all try, in different ways, to fold Surtur into their metafiction, to slap their colors on his fire. Khorne pushes more rage into him, trying to wake a lust for battle. Slaanesh whispers promises of exquisite, tailored destruction. Nurgle offers the peace that comes after the flames, an eternal, stench dangles futures, where Surtur's fire births new, stranger universes. Instead, something unexpected happens, where his essence presses into the warp, some of their more baroque emotional structures, artful cruelties, elaborate plots, layered despairs, burn off first, not fully destroyed, but scorched, simplified. Imagine an intricate ice sculpture pushed too close to a bonfire. The fine details go first. The sharp edges melt, leaving only a crude, dense core. What remains is closer to rage without subtext, destruction without symbolism, change without plan, raw apocalypse. Their gardens of sensation, their chessboards of souls, their carefully tended lakes of sorrow, all develop small, ugly patches, where the only thing that matters is finish it. To mortal psychers, these patches feel like hot spots in the warp, zones where visions all end with the same image, a sword of fire descending, a city crumbling, light swallowing everything. The chaos gods pull back, not in fear, in surprise. They have seen black crusades rise and fail. They have watched K-10 shards crawl across the void, eaten bioships, crushed Eldar empires. They have studied Necron's star-scourging weapons, Tyranid hive fleets, Orc, WAHs, the size of sectors. All of those want something they understand. More food, more territory, more skulls, more sensation, more control.
Surtur wants none of that. There is a new player on the field who doesn't care about the game at all. He is not trying to win. He is trying to end the board. The daemon world that birthed Surtur into 40K doesn't get a second chance. Freed from the broken circle, Surtur stretches to his full size, kilometers tall, sword scraping the upper atmosphere. His crown burns like a captive sun, molten lines scoring the sky. Lava pours from his mouth as he laughs, a sound so deep it makes mountains crumble and splits fault lines that have slumbered since the heresy. Around him, word bearers scream litanies, then just scream. Their vox filters turn praises to static as armor seals, warp, crack, and glow. Scrolls of flayed scripture burst into flame on their pauldrons. Daemon-bound weapons shriek in binary, and a daemonic cant as metal approaches its melting point. They chant the eightfold path through blistered tongues because that is all they know to do. The world is already hellish. Rivers of blood, bone forests, skies full of eyes and teeth that blink in time with distant warp tides. The ground is a collage of skulls, black rock and fused machinery, pulsing faintly with the heartbeat of the planet's daemon core. Surtur's flame doesn't care. Warp terrain or real terrain, physical stone or metaphor made flesh. It is all stuff in the way of fire to him. His existence has never bothered to distinguish between symbolic and literal destruction. A thing is either burning or it isn't. If it isn't, that is a temporary condition. He swings his sword once. A mountain range disappears, not shattered, not toppled, deleted. The rock flashes to plasma and then to light, leaving a scar of glowing air that rushes inward, confused about where a few hundred cubic kilometers of matter went. The shock wave that follows rolls across the hemisphere like a solid wall, pulverizing daemon and traitor alike. He takes a step. Half a continent becomes a new sea of magma. Cities of living bones sag in slump, their spires collapsing into viscous slurry. Cathedrals carved from fused skulls soften. The flayed skin banners that flutter from their heights ignite all at once, screaming sigils curling into ash. Rivers of blood boil, leaving behind smoking, blackened scars in the earth. Daemons rush in, mostly out of professional pride. 100 brass scorpions and juggernaut-mounted champions thunder across a plain that turns to glass beneath them. They crash against his ankles like angry toys, axes and chain blades biting into molten flesh that simply flows around the wounds and reforms. They expected screaming, roaring, acknowledgement, Champions of the Blood God are used to being noticed when they charge. Surtur barely feels them. Above the howling cavalry, elegant, impossible forms of keepers of secrets rise, their many arms weaving patterns of seduction and command. Veils of shimmering unreality ripple from their hands, weaving chains of temptation aimed at his mind. Slow down, savor it, taste each scream, make art of this. The suggestions hit his consciousness like rain on a furnace door. For an instant, an image tries to form of him carving sigils into continents, sculpting mountains of glass, arranging the ruins into pleasing patterns. Then it burns. He keeps walking. From Nurgle's garden waddle, great unclean ones, swollen with plague and affection. They open arms big enough to crush titans, offering hugs full of disease and the promise that once everything stops struggling, once everything rots, there will finally be peace. They don't make it to arm's length. Surtur steps through them. They melt, not unmade back into the warp, with the usual wet pop and echoing cackle, not banished by faith or Gellerfield logic. They just cannot maintain coherence when their own home medium is superheated with foreign lore. Their pus boils off into greasy steam. Their flies ignite. Their beloved infections die in a microsecond of pure alien fire. To them, it feels like insult as much as injury. On some daemon throne somewhere, Khorne snarls in anger and fascination as one of his favored legions, an entire brass-armored host that has survived a dozen Black Crusades, evaporates under a single casual swing. For the first time in a while, he is uncertain whether he is more enraged by the loss or impressed by the efficiency. On the Imperium side, the daemon world starts to come apart. All warp-touched worlds are unstable. They are compromises, half-real concessions to a universe that does not like being chewed on by metaphor. Surtur accelerates the failure. Volcanoes that were just aesthetic now become terminal. Magma chambers swell as heat levels spike beyond what any planetary crust, real or symbolic, can bear. Fault lines unzip, continents carve into the seething mantle. The bone forests catch fire, and the marrow inside the trunks cooks, expanding explosively, launching flensing shrapnel miles into the air. The crust buckles. What passes for tectonic plates on a daemon world grind and shear, shedding whole biomes into chasms. Warp storms trapped in lower atmospheres are released as the sky itself fractures, clouds pouring downward like liquid into the growing wounds. The core, half real, half metaphor, overheats past what its metaphysics can describe. At the center of the planet, an engine of daemon logic spins, sacrifices, pacts, centuries of worship layered into a throbbing knot of warp stuff that anchors the world's existence. It is designed to channel hate, despair, and blood into stability. It is not designed for this much heat. Surtur's presence presses down like a star collapsing. The planet's heart tries, desperately, to write new rules to cope, to restructure itself into something that can survive. It fails. There is a moment of absolute, crystalline stillness. Every daemon shrieking in the warp feels it, a sharp intake of breath, as a whole world poised between real and unreal hits a point of no return. Then the planet detonates. It doesn't crack neatly into chunks. It bursts. A wave of incandescent matter and broken unreality rips outward, turning atmosphere into plasma, hurling shards of half-existence into nearby warp currents. For an instant, the daemon world is a miniature, ugly sun, its death scream ringing through both immaterium and materium. On orbiting rocks, in nearby warp eddies, lesser daemons clutch at themselves as pieces of their realm of origin vanish. Word-bearer ships in high anchor positions are flash-burned through their void shields, hulls softening and sagging as they desperately try to translate out. Half make it. The other half become flares in the expanding fireball. To Imperial sensors, tracking the Eye of Terror, It looks like just another daemon world collapsing or being devoured by its patrons. Happens all the time. On a far-off listening post, manned by half-mad astropaths and overworked Navy officers, Auspex runes spike. A junior officer notes an unusual energy surge from Daemon Object Designation 7 and tags it for further analysis. His superior glances at the report, files it under expected warp turbulence, and forwards a 2-line summary to Battlefleet Command. A bored astropath logs a flare in the great screaming ledger of the eye. Another shiver, another convulsion, one more world gone weirdly bright, and then silent. Data is archived, charts are amended. A marginal note is added to a threat index that no one has updated properly since the 13th Black Crusade. No one realizes this was Surtur's first step. Not yet. The first time the Imperium really sees Surtur is when he hits a shrine world. By then he's wandering. On the daemon world where he manifested, there was at least a pretense of control, a circle, a sorcerer, a plan. That's gone now. The summoning site is a smear of cooled glass somewhere in a spreading cloud of molten debris. In Ragnarok, he was laser-focused. Asgard was the target hard-coded into his prophecy. He woke up knowing exactly what he was for. In 40K, there is no Asgard, no Odin, no ancient poem telling him where to go. All he has left is his function. Find the heart of a realm, light it on fire. He can feel centers of psychic weight, places where belief pools thick and heavy. Warp storms above daemon worlds, yes, but also the quiet, terrible gravity of the imperial creed around certain planets. Every shrine world is a knot of faith, billions of voices whispering the same name, lighting candles to the same idea, bleeding for the same distant, dying god. In the warp, they are flares of structured emotion. Terror is loudest, too loud. The Astronomican's beam, the Emperor's chained will, the constant screaming gravity of humanity's combined fear. Surtur senses it, and instinctively hesitates. That's the final thing to burn, the last page, not the first. Even in a mind like his, some mythic instinct whispers, you don't start with the world tree, you work up to it. He goes for something smaller first, a shrine world in the segmentum solar, not as fortified as Terra, but important, cathedrals the size of hive cities, relics that have seen 10,000 years of worship, pilgrims arriving by the billions in rusted, overfull transports. Its surface is a patchwork of towering basilicas, sprawling reliquary complexes, blessed fields fertilized with martyr bones, and teeming pilgrim camps that never quite disperse. He arrives in low orbit like a miniature sun. One moment, the void above the shrine world is the usual clutter of orbital stations, defense platforms, ship traffic and drifting junk. The next, Auspex screens scream as a mass of searing energy blinks into being on a trajectory that makes no sense. No warp flare, no translation signature, no logical vector. Defenses panic. Void shields flare, thinking they're under solar flare bombardment. Orbital augurs briefly classify him as a rogue star on collision course, then start throwing error runes as the star registers as partially humanoid, partially metaphysical nonsense. Then he moves, and all classifications are thrown out. He drops through the atmosphere. To the people below, the sky simply lights up. Clouds go from gray to white to incandescent in seconds. Shadows sharpen and then dissolve as light intensity ramps past what human eyes are built for. Every sensor shrieks. Every psyker on the planet clutches their head and tastes ash. Every seer, astropath, sanctioned psyker, weird, half-hidden witch goes blind with impressions of fire and doom. Their inner sight fills with a single, overwhelming image, a crown of flame and a sword
that looks like a line drawn across the end of history. Sisters of battle fall to their knees, thinking some grotesque new avatar of the Emperor has descended. Half of them start singing battle hymns through gritted teeth. The other half start confessing under their breath. He hits the crust like a meteor, slowed to walking speed. There is no impact crater in the traditional sense. There is a zone where physics briefly fails a sanity check, where his feet land, the ground vitrifies, stone flashing into glass, grass into brittle, smoking slag. Pilgrim camps vaporize. A few lucky souls die instantly. Others are flung outward in waves of superheated air, their bodies already burning before they land. Oceans nearby begin to steam, not boil, steam. Vast clouds of vapor rise in choking sheets as coastlines hiss and retreat, waters pulling back from a heat source they cannot comprehend. Vox traffic fills with overlapping panicked reports, giant silhouette, repeating, a height, estimate impossible. Auspex returns corrupted, not a Titan. I say again, not a Titan. Ground control units shout over each other. Pilgrim barges in low orbit try to break for open space and collide. Local air wings scramble, only to have pilots start screaming as cockpit glass goes opaque with heat shimmer. The first response is predictable. Knights, Titans, Guard regiments, orbital fire. Knight households whose entire existence revolves around defending holy ground roar to life. Engines howl, banners unfurl. Pilots recite oaths even as their machine spirits whimper in the back of their minds. Titans kneel in their guard halls, cathedral roofs splitting open as they rise, reactor hearts flaring like angry saints. On a blasted plain, barely starting to melt, a warhound Titan, its princeps half-crazed from the sheer psychic pressure, strides out alone to meet Surtur, plasma blast gun aimed. In the name of the Omnissiah and the throne, the words are mostly ritual. The princeps doesn't hear himself. His mind is a tiny sweating thing, clamped to the screaming mind of his god machine. Both of them forcibly looking up, at something they cannot fit into any existing schema. Surtur glances down. To him, the warhound is about the size of a toy he might have stepped on in a throne room long ago. It radiates heat, energy, defiance. He swings. He doesn't even put his back into it. A casual, almost lazy sweep of the sword, more a gesture than an attack. The warhound's head and entire upper torso vaporize. One instant, there is a snarling metal wolf with guns for teeth. The next, there is a geyser of expanding gas and shrapnel. The legs remain standing for a comically long beat, smoking pistons, still cycling as if they haven't gotten the news. Then they topple, crashing to the ground with a noise that, on this day, doesn't even make the top 100 in the loud rankings. Up in high orbit, a Retribution-class battleship opens up with every lance in range. Spear-thin beams of star-hot light stab down, punching through the upper atmosphere, turning air to plasma in their wakes. They stitch through Surtur's chest and shoulders, their machine spirits howling with righteous fury as they discharge. Light punches through flame. He hardly reacts. From the ship's perspective, the readings are insane. Target integrity, unchanged. Thermal bloom beyond scales. Feedback from the lancers. I hit something, but I did not hurt it. The Mechanicus watching the returns from the Auspex freak out in Binharik. Data priests cluster around hollow displays, robes smoldering where the picked feeds overexpose. Strings of machine code prayers and panicked error checks spit from their Vox grills as they run calculations, redone and redone again, and finally marked with the kind of marginalia that translates roughly to, "This is impossible. Please check reality. Integrity checksum." Requests for more data are sent and answered instantly. The answers do not help. Down system, astropathic choirs collapse under the psychic noise.
Some start babbling fragmented visions of fire god and end sun. Others laugh until their throats tear, convinced this is the Emperor finally stepping off his throne to personally smite the unworthy. Inquisitors scream into vox links for exterminator's authority. Lines rated for calm, authoritative doom now carry something much closer to open panic. Primary surface manifestation is not daemon-coded. Repeating, not daemon-coded. Shrine World Alpha Canonum, requesting immediate sanction for cyclonic torpedoes. Whoever hears this by the throne, this world is lost. Some demand the world be purged before whatever this is can spread or root itself in the warp. Others argue, frantically, that they need more information, that this might be a new weapon, a test, a sign. No one agrees on what Surtur is. Everyone agrees he is bad. On the surface, in a lesser basilica half a continent away, an old confessor looks up at the stained glass of the Emperor triumphant and thinks, wildly, we are finally being punished. All his life, he has preached that the Emperor is wrathful, that sin draws fire, that heresy invites the cleansing flame. Now the horizon is a solid wall of red gold, and the ground trembles like a living thing. He laughs, a small broken sound, and begins reciting litanies of repentance, even as the paint on the walls starts to blister. Then Surtur turns, because all of this, the titans, the battleships, the screaming, the shouting, is background noise. In the skein of psychic weight, he feels something else. The planet's primary continent-spanning cathedral complex, the heart of its faith, a spine of stone and adamantium that runs nearly pole to pole, studded with reliquary fortresses and massed temples. Its interior, a maze of shrines, built on ruins of older shrines. Billions of prayers have soaked into its foundations. Saints have died on its steps. Relics of 1,000 battles are entombed in its walls. It is this world's Asgard. Surtur turns toward it, eyes brightening. He lifts his sword and starts to walk. At this point, everyone with a say in high-level disaster management is pulling at different levers. The Imperium is very good at reacting badly and loudly to things it doesn't understand. This, however, is new, even by their standards. The Inquisition, quarantine the system, kill everything if we have to. In orbit above the Shrine World, inquisitorial sigils blaze on Vox channels, normally reserved for astropathic emergency codes. Rosette bearers shout over one another, from secure chambers on battle barges and hidden fortresses. One, a hard-faced lord of the Ordo Malleus, with augmetic eyes and zero remaining patience, slams a fist into a hololith table as the giant of fire trudges, inexorably, toward the world-spanning cathedral. Seal the warp routes. No one leaves this system. No one. Not pilgrims. Not clergy. Not fleet assets. If that thing is mimetic, if it infects the warp, I will not have it riding out on the minds of fleeing cowards. Another, of the Ordo Hereticus, flicks through grainy picked captures with something like awe and horror warring in her expression. It burned a titan in one stroke. This is beyond demonic classification. If we cannot bind it, we erase it. If we cannot erase it, a beat, we erase everything around it. Exterminatus authority requests surge up the chain like a flood. Some hit bureaucratic dams, others blast through on sheer urgency. Somewhere, an overworked Lord Inquisitor stamps an approval seal on a cyclonic torpedo order with a hand that won't quite stop shaking. The Mechanicus. We must study this. This is primordial annihilation tech. On a nearby Forge world, red-robed Magi crowd around flickering data streams. Mechadendrites twitching like excited insects. Grainy Auspex returns show a heat signature that simply ignores known ceilings, logarithmic scales forced to compress into nonsense. Structural analysis of the Shrine World's crust indicates stress behaviors the priests have only ever seen in theoretical models for planetary scale deliberate unbinding.
+++ query. Could subject be replicated? ++++++ hypothesis. Manifestation of lost STC weapon. ++++SEB query. What happens if we point it at Mars? That last line is censored by a panicked junior tech priest before it can be permanently archived. To the Mechanicus, Surtur is less a god and more a technology demonstrator, a proof of concept for perfect, narrative-level planetary immolation. They petition the Inquisition not to stop the Exterminatus order but to delay it. If we can observe it for 87.3 more minutes, we may acquire enough data to construct models. Imagine controlled miniaturization. Imagine deploying lesser versions against Xenos holdings. For the Omnissiah's glory, do not blow it up yet. The Inquisition sends back an answer that can be roughly translated as, "We will blow up whatever we like." The Ecclesiarchy. This is a test or a judgment, or both. On a nearby Cardinal world, hollow feeds of the burning shrine world play in vast, incense-choked chambers. High-ranking clerics in gold-threaded vestments kneel, weep, or rant at the sight of a fiery giant, striding through holy ground as if it were dry tinder. Half of them declare this a test of faith. The Emperor sends his angels in terrible form. Those who stand firm amid the flames will be saved. Those who falter were never truly his. The other half insist it is punishment, pure and simple. Our pride, our laxity, our tolerance of minor deviancies, we have offended him, and now his wrath walks. None of them consider, not even for a second, that this might have nothing to do with the Emperor at all. The idea that a different story might have spilled into theirs is heretical on a level they are not equipped to contemplate. Pilgrims on other worlds see shaky vidlogs of Surtur wreathed in lance fire and fall into two rough camps. Those who cry out to him as a fire angel of the Emperor, and those who go mad from the sheer wrongness of seeing something that big not be a titan. The Astartes, can it be punched? If yes, send us. In fortress monasteries across the region, chapter masters watch the same flickering feeds in armored silence. Some see a Xenos god thing and start drawing up strike force plans, because that is what they do. A few, especially from more zealous chapters, quietly prepare for the possibility that they may be called to die buying time for Exterminatus. "We will strike at the ankles," says one grimly, studying a hololith of Surtur's stride. "Bring it down, titans fall. This will too. It bleeds fire, then we shall drown in it." Others are more cautious. One particularly jaded master, his chapter battered from too many hopeless crusades, just snorts. "If the Inquisition wants to throw us at that, they can come say it to my face, in person, on the ground, within its reach." He does not receive that order. Yet, up in the warp, the Chaos Gods are watching too. Surtur's fire feeds them. Every death is still a mortal's fear, every scream still a psychic echo. The warp does not care who swung the sword, only that someone screamed while dying, but there's less flavor than they're used to. Usually, destruction in the 41st millennium is marinated. A world falls through stages: initial panic, desperate hope, betrayal, despair, occasional, delicious last-minute corruption. Souls simmer, emotions layer. Surtur shortcuts all that. The destruction is so absolute, so fast, that there's not as much lingering despair or drawn-out temptation to savor. It's closer to eating raw grain than finished bread, nutritionally fine, emotionally disappointing. Corn is fine with that. A kill is a kill. Blood is blood, whether it splashes artistically or not. He bellows approval every time Surtur carves another swathe of existence apart. And if the nuance is lacking, whatever, the skull count's still going up. Slanesh is annoyed. Too quick, they murmur, watching an entire pilgrim city flash into ash. Where is the climax? Where is the exquisite pause between hope and horror? This is blunt. They try to nudge a few cults on distant worlds into developing a fascination with the fire giant to see if they can at least spin some interesting decadence out of the fear. The results are mixed. Sinch is bothered by the lack of long-term plots. Surtur isn't building anything out of the ashes. He isn't a new vassal carving his empire. He isn't seeding warp fractures that will birth clever new horrors centuries down the line. He obliterates and then moves on. To the changer of ways, that feels like a waste. Nurgle finds a bleak humor in it. All their carefully tended gardens of misery, all their slow bubbling plagues and twisted little cults could just be cut short by a tourist from another story who sees their work and says basically, nice realm. Shame if someone finished it properly. Grandfather Nurgle wheezes a laugh that kills a few dozen minor daemons outright, pats a rotting tree, and mutters that it was bound to happen eventually, someone trying to end the joke instead of stretching it. On Terra, the Emperor feels it too. He's not omniscient, but when something starts rewriting the mass of reality like this, he notices. His burning awareness brushes across the shrine world, across Surtur's walking singularity of fire.
To him, it looks like a glitch in a very old program. He recognizes something in the pattern. Not chaos, not the old ones, not Necron Star Eaters, and not Catan shards, which are all hunger and pride and crystalline ego, not Tyrannid hive minds, which are blunt, simple optimization loops. Something external, something whose nature is, you cannot fight forever. Eventually, something comes that does not want your territory, your faith, your surrender. It just wants to end the segment of the story where you exist. He grasps, in an instant, the kind of narrative Surtur comes from, one where apocalypses happen on schedule, where prophecies have conclusions, where even gods have last acts written for them. If he had lungs, the Emperor might laugh. The sound would be terrible, raw, scraping, half-rusted. But beneath it would be genuine, bitter amusement. In a universe where everything is stuck in a loop of perpetual war, where no faction is allowed a true ending, because the setting itself is built on, and then it got worse. Surtur is an obnoxious reminder that endings exist. Not happy endings, not victorious endings, just endings. So what actually happens if Surtur really digs in? He is not Whis. He doesn't nudge. He doesn't play subtle games with probability. He doesn't care about balancing outcomes, protecting narratives, or giving anyone a chance. Where he goes, things end. He is a conclusion given legs. Daemon worlds, detonated. The daemon world that birthed him was just the pilot episode. If Surtur walks the Eye of Terror long enough, other warped planets will loom in his path. Worlds made of flesh, worlds made of flesh, worlds made of teeth, worlds that are little more than a god's mood, held together by bad geometry. From the daemon's perspective, these worlds are home. They're battlefields, nurseries, shrines. From Surtur's perspective, they're fuel and topography. He strides across one, where the sky is a living, pulsing membrane. Every step sends shockwaves through the planet's stitched-together psyche. Daemon princes roar, oaths to their patrons, and fling armies at his feet. They die in curtains of flame, dissolving before they can even feel the satisfaction of martyrdom. Their patrons feel the loss as a sharp, annoying drop in ambient worship. Surtur feels nothing. The planet lasts a little longer if its core is heavily metaphysical, if the god behind it shunts in power. But the end result is the same. Eventually, its structure, physical and symbolic, its temperatures, reality doesn't support. It pops. Hive worlds turned into glass marbles, Imagine a city that stretches down for kilometers, layer after layer of poverty and industry, cathedrals perched atop towers, made of 1 billion lives worth of sweat and fear. Now imagine Surtur stepping into the upper atmosphere and beginning to fall. By the time he hits ground level, everything above him is ash. Hive worlds are dense with narrative weight, billions of souls, countless tiny stories, all wrapped in a shell of metal and sin. Surtur's presence slams into that heap like an eraser. Defenders throw everything they have at him: orbital bombardments, Titan legions, space marine chapters, desperate psychic last stands. He wades through it all. Plasma eats at him. Void shields flicker around his ankles. Battle barges crash into his shins and explode. The planet itself changes. Ground liquefies, then re-solidifies into glass. Hab blocks soften like wax under a blowtorch. Underground water supplies flash to vapor, detonating cisterns and reservoirs in chained explosions. Whole hive stacks slump and slide, flowing into shimmering obsidian seas. From orbit, the world looks smooth, dark, reflective, a toy marble rolling slowly around its star. There are probably some survivors, buried deep in imperfectly melted pockets for a while. They die slowly, lost, surrounded by solid glass, praying to a god who cannot even hear them over the roar of molten stone. Craft worlds, if he ever finds one, it becomes a beautiful, tragic shooting star. Eldar Farseers live in the future. That's their thing. They see doom coming so far ahead of schedule that they get the dubious privilege of failing to avert it for centuries. They see Surtur coming like a smear of burning ink across all their scryed skeins. He is an ending that does not belong to this cycle, not she who thirsts, not the rising of some long-dormant god. A foreign Ragnarok, the echo of another culture's apocalypse. Every path they trace that intersects him leads to the same image. Their craft world, ancient and proud, turned into a trailing smear of molten wraithbone. They run. Webway paths are sealed. Entire craft worlds divert course on glacial thruster-fueled arcs. Some make it. A few misjudge, or are cut off by warp storms stirred by Surtur's continued vandalism of reality. One inevitably is too slow. When he reaches it, Surtur does not feel its history. He doesn't care that it houses souls older than most human empires. He sees a floating continent, heavy with psychic gravity, a heart of a smaller realm. He swings. Sections of the craft world burst off in molten chunks, trailing glowing debris as it begins to fall into the nearest star. Eldar psychic screams fountain into the warp. Spirit stones crack like glass in ovens. From far away, it is a beautiful, tragic shooting star, a line of burning wraithbone, blooming slowly into nothing. Orc empires. He'd actually get along disturbingly well with orcs' fire, big fire, right up until they burn with everything else. If there's anyone in the galaxy predisposed to enjoy Surtur, it's the orcs. A W-A-H-E on the rise might look up, see a giant made of flame stomping a continent, and respond with universal admiration. Or E, look it dat, git. E that's a proper bonfire. We gotta fight aim. In the short term, Surtur plus orcs is a feedback loop of disaster. Orcs swarm toward him in ramshackle rocks and hurtling asteroids, all pointed at the biggest, loudest thing in sight. They hit him like green buckshot. He doesn't notice. On the ground, war bosses bellow challenges, firing everything from shooters to looted macro cannons at his legs. Knobs try to climb his ankles. Weird boys, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of WAGA in the air, accidentally channel it all at once, and some of that energy even manages to bite into Surtur's form, popping off chunks of molten rock. For a moment, it looks almost like a fight. Then Surtur gets bored and walks through an orc empire the size of a sector, leaving behind a scatter of charred, still laughing skeletons and fused scrap. Orcs will tell stories about him. They'll paint crude versions of him on Gorkanauts and Stompers. They'll scream his name as a compliment in brawls. He will never learn theirs. In the short term, everyone would treat him like an existential crisis. Chaos would try to redirect him at the Imperium. Dark apostles and sorcerers throw together half-baked rituals, trying to tune his presence, to lure him toward terror, or toward some hated rival's daemon world. They have partial success. Surtur is not uninfluenceable. He is drawn to psychic density. If they make a particular planet burn brighter in the warp, with mass sacrifices, concentrated rituals, the path of least resistance might pull him that way for about 5 minutes. Then their circle melts, their temple evaporates, and Surtur walks on. The Imperium would try to redirect him at chaos. Inquisitors will approve heresies they'd never tolerate otherwise, parley with chaos warlords, ceasefires with Xenos, coordinated Surtur management campaigns. If throwing a Black Legion fortress world into his path buys terror another century, they'll do it. There will be strange, ugly alliances, a radical inquisitor and a grudging chaos lord standing on the same battlement, pointing the universe's biggest fire giant at someone they both hate slightly more. Necrons might try to contain or weaponize him as a convenient biotransference accelerator. To a Necron overlord, Surtur looks a lot like a very large, very messy Ketan shard. Dynasties that still remember the war in heaven will panic or salivate, depending on temperament. Some will awaken whole tomb complexes early, trying to deploy inertialess traps, tesseract labyrinths, and phase nets to box him. Their tech has the best shot of doing anything meaningful. They operate on laws as deep as Surtur's own. A tesseract labyrinth might, for a time, snip a piece of him off and cram it into a pocket dimension. Necron scientists will study that sliver. Then the box will start to glow. Then it will fail. Eldar Farseers would call him an ending that does not belong to this cycle. They'd meet in high, echoing crystal halls, robes brushing carved floors, speaking in somber tones about foreign fate threads and imported apocalypses. Some will argue for subtle interference, tiny nudges to keep him from key nodes. Others will say, flatly, that he is beyond their art. They will all agree he should never ever be allowed near the webway's deeper knots. There's story potential in all directions. An Inquisitor arguing they should temporarily cooperate with a Chaos Lord to steer Surtur into a Necron-dominated region. Both sides knowing they will betray each other the moment the Fire Giant takes the bait. A desperate plan to lure Surtur toward a Tyranid hive fleet and let the resulting energy spike vaporize half a galaxy arm, using psychic bait grown from captured synapse creatures and heretical Mechanicus-built Psalm engines. A Mechanicus cult forming around the study of the Eternal Flame Protocol, viewing Surtur as a manifestation of the Omnissiah's delete command, writing hymns about optimal data purge through planetary combustion. Every faction would have a Surtur plan. None of them would be good plans. But in the long run, if he's not stopped or recalled, he'd do to this galaxy what he did to Asgard, not in a neat single swing. 40K is too big, too obnoxiously cluttered, too full of shields and Geller fields and inconvenient physics. But trendline-wise, everything moves a little closer to done. Star by star, world by world, shrine by shrine. The number of functioning realms drops. Warp storms bloom in his wake, then die as their anchors are obliterated. There are fewer places for chaos to play, fewer planets for the Imperium to ruin, fewer toys for everyone. And that is the one thing Warhammer 40,000 genuinely doesn't know what to do with. Because the entire setting is built on the idea of no catharsis, no final Ragnarok to clean the board, no Armageddon that actually ends the war. Just more churn, more skulls, more half-failed apocalypses. Surtur is a walking insult to that. He is the narrative muscle memory of a different universe saying, when it's time, the curtain comes down. He doesn't become a chaos god. On paper, he should be a perfect candidate. towering, terrifying, fire-wreathed, associated with destruction on a mythic scale. If some mortal prophet scratched his silhouette onto a shrine wall and wrote blood flame underneath, cults would form overnight. People would start shouting his name in battle. Skulls would burn extra nicely. But that isn't how godhood works in 40K. Chaos gods are feedback loops. They are made of want, endless, gnawing want. They feed on belief and emotion, grow from it, and then twist reality to generate more of the same. Khorne wants more rage, Slaanesh more excess, Nurgle more acceptance of despair, Tzeentch more change for its own sake. Surtur does not want more of anything. He is too single-purpose, too self-contained. His hunger is not ongoing, it is task-bound. In his own story, his life cycle is simple: awaken, burn, Asgard, die in the doing. There is no and then. After Asgard, he opens a Patreon for more realms. Chaos might feed off what he does. Every roasted world still screams into the warp, but he will never sit on a throne beside them, whispering for more worship. He doesn't care about being remembered. There's no Surtur cult perpetual. There is just the function, end realm, move on. The priests and sorcerers who try to worship him will find their prayers very unsatisfying. Sometimes the fire comes, sometimes it doesn't. It never answers, it never bargains, it never promises. To the warp, he is like a natural disaster with a name. He doesn't become the Imperium's secret weapon either. The Imperium loves dangerous tools it shouldn't touch. Daemon hosts, xenotech, repurposed Necron artifacts. If you can slap enough purity seals on it, someone will try to point it in a useful direction. Surtur refuses to fit even that abusive relationship. He can't be reasoned with, can't be bribed. You cannot threaten what has already fulfilled its purpose once and is now operating on residual directive. Offer him worlds, souls, glory, absolution. He doesn't care. You could, at best, momentarily trick him into walking in one direction instead of another by dangling something realm-heartish in his path. An especially important shrine world, a sector capital, a blackstone fortress. Amplify its psychic weight, make it shine brighter than the thing next to it, and he may choose that knot of significance to burn first. For a while, desperate strategists across the galaxy will treat him like a cosmic bull, and themselves as slightly suicidal matadors. Throw him a chaos bastion so he doesn't step on a forge world. Sacrifice a rebellious scepter to drag him away from terror. Light up a Necron tomb system with sacrificial psychic beacons and hope he sees it as a tastier heart. But these are momentary deflections, not control. He doesn't fix the setting. He doesn't bring peace. He doesn't save anyone. This isn't a crossover where the Marvel character arrives, lays down some cosmic lore, and drags the 40K galaxy kicking and screaming into something better. Surtur isn't a reformer. He's not even a villain in the 40K sense, playing the great game for power. He is a discontinuity. What he does is force the galaxy to confront a possibility it hates, that this grind can end, not in victory, not in healing, just in fire. For most of the galaxy's institutions, that is horrifying. The Imperium is a machine built to survive endless war, not to cope with the idea that war might one day stop because there's nothing left. Its entire identity, its theology, its bureaucracy, its daily horror, assumes tomorrow will be worse, but still there. Chaos is built on the same assumption. The gods need mortals to keep suffering, keep wanting, keep spiraling. An outsider who comes in and says, effectively, what if no one gets to keep playing, is bad for business, and yet for some, Surtur's presence lands differently. For broken guardsmen on their 7th and final deployment, huddled in trenches, watching the horizon turn orange, the idea that this is it might feel more like mercy than terror. Not a good death, not a meaningful one, just an end. No more again, no more replacements.
No more commissars shouting forwards. For half-mad cultists who have given everything to gods that will never actually deliver the apocalypse they promise. Seeing a fire giant who does not bargain, does not demand endless rights, does not stretch out their torment for centuries, might look like the first honest thing they've ever witnessed. For Eldar, who have seen too much, who remember their empire before it rotted into decadence and exploded into Slanesh, Surtur is a horror and a relief in equal measure. He is the thing they fear for their few remaining havens, and the thing that deep in the darkest corners of their minds, they suspect might be better than spending another 10,000 years failing to outrun she who thirsts. From the Warp's perspective, he's a foreign patch trying to install Ragnarok on a system hard-coded for there is only war. The core loop of 40k is conflict escalation, catastrophe new, worse status quo repeat. There is no and then the curtain falls. No final showdown meant to end the cycle. Even galactic-scale disasters like the Horus Heresy or the Cicatrix Maledictum ultimately serve to set up more centuries of grinding misery. Surtur's code says, at the end of the world, put everything in the fire and roll credits. Those two philosophies are fundamentally incompatible. If Surtur's Ragnarok protocol truly took root in the Warp, if mortals started to believe in final endings, to desire a true apocalypse rather than an open-ended struggle, it could start to warp the metaphysical landscape in ways even the chaos gods might not enjoy. Imagine a small but growing cult, not of Surtur specifically, but of the idea that there should be an end. That one day, the war should be allowed to stop, not because anyone wins, but because the story is finished. That's dangerous, not because it's powerful in the traditional sense, but because it undermines the shared assumption that keeps the entire horrific treadmill spinning. From the meta perspective, he's hilarious and terrifying. Hilarious because he exposes how absurd 40k really is. Put a character like Surtur in front of an Inquisitor, a Chaos Lord, and a Necron Overlord, and watch them scramble to reframe their grandiose philosophies around a walking flaming note to all long-term plans. Terrifying, because if you follow his logic to the end, there's nothing left. No grimdark aesthetic, no never-ending factions, just ash. In a world where every faction's grand plan is built on the assumption that the game never really stops, chaos will always plot, the Imperium will always march, Tyranids will always consume, Necrons will always awaken. Surtur is that one player who walks in late, looks at the board and says, "Why are you all still playing with this? You know how it ends." Then he lights the table on fire, and for one brief, horrifyingly honest moment, the galaxy has to admit, he's not wrong.